Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode number 219 of the Golf Podcast. If you missed our Instagram and Snap stories this week, Mike and I were at the Titleist Regional Fitting Center at Sleepy Hollow Country Club in Westchester, New York. We did a full bag fitting courtesy of our friends at Titleist. And Mike, I know you feel the same way. I want to extend a big thank you to the team at Titleist, especially our fitter and coach, Kevin Sprecher. We're going to cut to that in a moment. We're going to break down those results, but that was, it goes down on that list of dream days for us. I mean, we got to do like our full golf, like kind of fanboy geek out moment, like going through this equipment. I mean, you and I were like legitimately just so excited leading up to it. Texting each other, I can't believe it. Tomorrow's the day. We're going to do it. I know when I first saw you that morning, you're like, I didn't sleep last night, man.
Yeah.
I mean, we were as excited as you can be because it's one of those experiences that you just take so much away from it, above and beyond the equipment, the learning experience, the insight that you get working with someone like Kevin, someone who has that experience from both a club fitting and also a coaching standpoint. And when you start to really dive in, you learn so much about the game, when you learn how the equipment works, not just saying like, okay, someone just telling you this is the right thing for you, but when you just see it and when you feel it and when you have that, it feels like a collaboration. It really,
Yes.
That's the way it really felt. Cause where you have Kevin saying, listen, I can't tell you, you got to tell me, like, how does that feel? Is that what you want? What do you want to do with your game? And when they ask those intelligent questions, I feel like you learn so much. So I don't know, Mike, there's just so many highlights for me. There's so much for us to talk about tonight, decompressing this. We've had so many people asking us questions like, okay, so what's in the bag? What did we do? And we're going to go over all that tonight. But Mike, first take, what's your feelings on it? What were some of your top experiences of the day?
Well, first things first, my back is killing me, but for good reasons, because we got to smack around about 125 balls each yesterday in a beautiful sunny day at a gorgeous country club. And let me tell you something, Kevin, awesome guy, just like you said. I felt very comfortable with him the minute I walked up to him and shook his hand because he knew kind of who we were, going into it. But I think this goes for anybody else out there who's going to a fitting maybe for the first time. You kind of get a little nervous because, this is a coach, this is a pro. He's a really good golfer. He's a fitter, and he's going to watch me just hack the ball over and over again. So I kind of set the standard. I basically told him that what our handicaps were. Remember that I said, this is who we are. This is where our game's at. Gave him that up front. Kind of, he knew going in, and I loved that he kind of made us hit our current clubs just to kind of get a feel for what type of player we are. And he got that from 5 swings with a 7-iron, 5 swings with a driver, and so on and so forth. So I really, really enjoyed the day. I thought it was the knowledge we received is great. And one of the big things, and I want to talk about this later on in the show, is you and I kind of have to go back to the drawing board. I think we have to recalibrate now because going from a 7-iron that was carrying 175, 176, 174, 172 to now, I think when I walked off with the AP3s, I think I was hitting it 190. So, I mean, yeah, it sounds like, I really got some new muscle out of these new clubs. It's all great and good, but I have to go kind of tune that up now.
Yeah. Well, what I was really happy with and what I went into it saying, he said, look, what do you want to do here? We're looking for distance. We're looking for dispersion. And I was like, I will sacrifice distance all day for dispersion. And I'm like, I want you to focus on that. I want to tighten it up. And I told him how, on the podcast here, we've been talking about one big topic this year has been reducing our misses, reducing our mistakes, and finding a way to score through that. So I said, I want to put a real focus on that. The distance that I ended up picking up was actually surprising to me. And I said, I'm like, hey, I'll take it. That's found, out of nowhere. I'll take, but we were really working on that dispersion. And to me, that's what I'm so happy about leading into the season as we're going to be playing with the clubs and realizing that I'm going to have that much more added confidence in my hand. So I want to talk about all that. I want to get into it. There's just so much to break down. We've got the clubs, we've got the TrackMan in front of us. So this is going to be a fun one.
Yeah. And Frank, I can tell you this, that you and I were both impressed with each other's performance yesterday. I was impressed. as hell with how long you were hitting that ball, how straight you were hitting those shots. I felt good with mine. I know you were like in awe on some of my driver shots. So, we were just impressing each other with these new clubs and these new shafts. And again, we're going to talk about shafts a little more in detail and how important they are after what we've learned. So before we get into all that, Frank, let's just give Titleist a big thank you. Something else I also learned while we were there at Sleepy Hollow is that anyone can go through a Titleist fitting. So please, after the results you're going to hear tonight, you owe it to yourself. Go to one of these Titleist. They're actually called Titleist Thursdays. And Titleist Thursdays, they're a unique opportunity for every player to receive a high quality, and let me tell you, it was high quality Titleist club fitting or guided trial experience with an expert Titleist product specialist.
Yeah, Mike, we saw that, as you said, firsthand, up close. There's the full selection of Titleist metals, irons, and wedges. You'll be hitting the Pro V1 or Pro V1X golf balls throughout. And because the proof is in the numbers, Titleist specialists are equipped with TrackMan ball flight monitor technology to make sure you find the perfect equipment specifications for your game, and the confidence that it takes to shoot those lower scores that we're all chasing, right? So just watching, that thing in action for our fitting, it was remarkable. And here's the best part. Titleist Thursdays are free. You can sign up for one nearest you. You can look for them by just going to Titleist.com to learn more. And I'm so glad that we're talking about that, Mike, because I think one thing that it was rattling around in the back of my mind as we're doing it. And we're posting the stories on Instagram and Snapchat, and people are hitting us up on the DMs and they're saying, oh my God, I'm so jealous. That's so amazing. A lot of that stuff comes out like a once in a lifetime type of thing. And it's rattling around in the back of my brain. I'm like, we're really telling people how great this is. And I don't want people to have like that FOMO where they feel like, all right, yeah, that's awesome, but it's also incredibly expensive, right? And I think that's something that we've been working our way through, dispelling as many rumors as we can as we learn about fittings, because it's fairly new to us. 2 years ago, neither one of us had ever been fitted for a club, and now we're going through all these different detailed fittings, whether it be the fittings we did with Pete's Golf or down at Club Champion or whatever. We're learning something each time we do this. But then I'm thinking, I don't want this to come across as being like a true once in a lifetime where people are going to be like, well, that's just unattainable because, Frank and Mike are so lucky because Titleist hooked them up with this great experience, which we are. No doubt about it. We're lucky for that to happen. But I don't want people to think, well, that's something I can never do. And the proof of that is something like this, these Thursdays where they're doing these free, fittings or these guided trials. I think what it comes down to is if you do like a little bit of homework and a little bit of research, and it doesn't even take much. In this particular case, you just go to Titleist.com and look for it. But there are ways that you can get involved in these things, even if you don't necessarily have the budget for it. And I think a smart thing to do, and I'll say this right off the bat, is when you go into it, and a good fitter is going to ask you questions like we talked about, like, what do you want to do? Distance, dispersion, where are you at? Where's your game at? What are you working on? Are you working with a coach? They're going to ask these things because they want to make sure, they have stake in this too. They want to make sure you're fitted properly. But a good one's also going to ask, what's your budget? Because, right. and I thought this was a great thing that, we've heard from fitters before where they say, the last thing I want to do is just show you how this one club or shaft or something is perfect for you, only for you to find out that it's way out of your range, because it can. Like some of these things, they can go way up in price. I mean, we're talking about, we saw some $500 shafts, and you think about that and you're like, the last thing you want is to be walking out of there hanging your head, because now you're just that much more aware that the club in your hands, the club you came in with, before your fitting, is not right for you, and you can't afford the one that is right for you. So I think if you go in and say, look, this is my budget and this is what I'm looking to do, that gives the fitters that proper constraints and that box to work within. They say, that's where we can do it, and we're going to give you the most improvement we can out of that. And that I think is the smart play. So I wanted to make sure we got that across, because I didn't want to ever feel like we're promoting this idea of something that's so amazing, yet it's unattainable. You know?
Yeah, that makes sense. It totally
it's
makes
like,
sense.
Hey guys, you all got to try this steak. It's $150, but it's life-changing. Well, there's going to be some people who'll be like, well, I don't have the means to do that, Frank. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's why I wanted to be able to be like, no, wait, there are ways that you can do this on all different budgets, you know, as long as you're smart about it and you work your way through it. And that was an important one as far as a takeaway for me anyway.
Yeah, totally, for sure. And one quick last point on this is you'll walk away from doing this fitting not just saying, oh, that was great, that was a lot of fun. Honestly, I walked away just scratching my head saying, wow, what just happened? Yeah. Like my whole entire world just changed yesterday. Confidence level through the roof, excitement for the clubs to come. You know, just knowing, like we said, knowing that now we're more confident, knowing that these clubs are fit for us. So this could change your life. And if you're in the market to buy yourself, to spend the money and get new clubs, you owe it to yourself to go do one of these for sure.
Yes, you do. And if nothing else, just if you're not sure, start testing the waters by doing something like one of these free opportunities where you can test it a little bit, and then you can dive deeper and deeper as you get into it. So there's a lot of different things. I want to really dig into this, and I want to dig into, and I know a lot of people are asking us about the club specifically and what we ended up with. They're not in our hands yet. Those clubs are, as with any really good fitting, all the specs are going to get sent off to the manufacturer, and then that's going to be built to spec. But the good news is the turnaround time for Titleist is very quick. So we expect those to be in very shortly. And when we do, we're going to do some more videos and what's in the bag and take you guys through that. So stay tuned for that, but we're going to run through it. We're going to talk a little bit about it. And I want to talk about also some, just general things I learned about equipment while we were there. Before we do that, and before we really dive into those results, I want to thank Control GX. They're the first gray reducing shampoo from Just for Men, and they're sponsoring this episode. Just for Men helps men look their best so they can celebrate who they are, what they achieve, and how they feel. They relentlessly innovate and deliver smart hair care technology that does the work for you. It makes it ridiculously easy to get the natural look you want. And now reducing your gray is as easy as washing your hair with Control GX. Just use it like you would your normal regular shampoo until you get those results that you see. It's subtle, natural looking results. You shampoo it in, you rinse it out, you move on. Easy as that. Most guys get the results they want in about 2 weeks. So look forward to a smart look, because when you look as good as you feel, every date night, every meeting, every guy's night out, it's all something to look forward to. And you can get 25% off Control GX using code regrowth25 at controlgx.com. That's regrowth25 to get 25% off Control GX at controlgx.com. All right, Mike. So I know we're so excited about it. We just kind of dove into a lot of it, but let's just talk real quick about logistics wise, what this was like.
Yes.
So you and I, we blocked out the day because doing other fittings before, we know that they can take a while when it's done right. And we head down there early in the morning. Sleepy Hollow Country Club is just a beautiful, beautiful track in Westchester. Titleist has their regional fitting center located right there. And this thing was like bells and whistles everywhere. I mean, Kevin has access to everything. I mean, between the trackmans for the data, he's got force plates there. He's got, as I said, 1,000 different shafts, which is just mind blowing. And when you see them in front of you, you're like, what, and the different combinations and the things he can do, because I think that was one thing that some people worry about. And I've had that question come to me like, well, what's, the difference with when you're fitted within just one manufacturer? People sometimes worry about the limitation. I would say here, there was no limitation. I mean,
none.
1,000 different combinations that he could put you in. If you can't find something for your game in there, there's definitely a problem. So that was a big thing, and that made me feel really, really good there. But one thing that Kevin had said is a lot of times when people book full bag fittings with him, he'll say, let's break this up over 2 days, because you are hitting a lot of balls. If you're going to do it right, as he says, you don't put so much of a time constraint on it. He says, if I'm going to try to fit somebody just in a half hour, an hour, there's a lot of constraints, and I can't always dig as deep as I want to dig. So he said, be mindful of that. Be mindful of the time if you're going to do a full bed fit, and also be mindful of your fitness. Because if you are somebody who is not necessarily used to hitting 200 balls on the range, as you start to get worn out and tired, it's going to be harder to fit you. Because there's going to be that tired factor. So
and we felt that a little.
We definitely felt that. I'm sore today from it.
Yeah, big time.
But we had our own constraints with the video that we had to kind of do it all in one day, but we powered through. I don't mind being sore for a couple of days, that's for sure. But that was something that I found interesting. And then what we did was we started with irons. After irons, we moved on to, fairway metals and hybrids. And then we moved from there to driver and then on to wedges. Wedges was the last thing we did. So we systematically worked our way through. And then again, just talking about the logistics, what we would do is and for anybody, if you haven't had a fitting, you can kind of know what to expect going in. We started with hitting as a baseline. Kevin wanted to see us hit our clubs. So we hit like our 7 irons each. Then he went through those questions of what we want to do, what we want to accomplish. We told him how we're both working on our game. So he asked the smart question of saying, do you want me to fit you to where you are now, where you're going? The dual benefit of him also being an instructor, he gets that. And so a lot of times the people that he's fitting, he's also instructing. So he was, how great was that to have the best of both worlds that day?
I
love that. And I love that, he came up with the play that gave me the most confidence. He's like, Frank, let's split the difference. I'm going to fit you to a club that I feel like is going to give you maximized performance where you're at, but still gives you that room to grow where I can see what you're working on in your game. You're going to grow into the club even more. So then that too brings down for me, like the overall cost, the life of the club, because it gives me so much more life in the club. I can use it for that many more seasons. So that was smart. So what we did after that, after giving that baseline, he could look at you and just, fitting so many people, he can get an idea just from that of where he wants to start. And then we will start with, club heads, and they can just, it's very quick how they can just swap out shafts and things like that. So he'll start swapping some stuff out, and you're just working, and some stuff you have to be, if I'm going to give anybody a tip who's going to go through a fitting, it's that be 100% honest. Don't try to sway the numbers because you want to say something because you think it's going to be what the fitter wants to hear. Forget that. Don't say it because you think that this is what they want to fit you to or something. I know it may sound funny, but you'll get it as you do it. Just say, I'm just going to give them the honest opinion. And don't be trying to think like, oh, I need to say the right thing, that this shaft is a little bit heavier and I can feel it. Even if it is heavier, if it feels lighter to you, say that, because it could be a heavier shaft, but it could be balanced different. That's something that I learned there too. And that balance can make you feel a little bit different. So be honest, give the feedback. And what they're going to do is they're going to keep working through different shafts and different things like that. And then once they feel like they've got that narrowed down, we worked on lie angle. Of attack. We had even at one point, hopefully they show it in the video, of us measuring our arms to give an idea and how we were going to have that shaft angle to the ground. And then even when we felt like we were fit to what felt good, we still went on and dug deeper and tried some other things. And I'm so glad we did. And I'll tell you my little story with the AP2s.
Yeah.
I went into that.
You thought you were walking off with those, huh?
Listen, and I'm going to be 100% honest with everybody out there. I went into that thing. I wanted to walk out of there with AP2s.
Yeah.
I'm like, these clubs are gorgeous, forged clubs. These are the clubs that Jordan Spieth plays, right? So we hit a couple different ones, and then we were into the AP2s, and I started hitting those things nice. Yeah, and one thing that shocked me, and you'll see this in the video, I was shocked with how forgiving they were, because we talked about this before, and I probably shouldn't have been shocked, because we talked about how forged clubs, it's a big rumor about them being completely unforgiving. They've come a long way. Forged clubs are actually more forgiving than you think. And Kevin said the same thing. He said a lot of guys, they see the AP2s and they're like, that's a player's club. I can't play that. I'm not ready for that. And I was so happy because I'm like, wow, I'm hitting this club really well. This feels really good. But he's like, listen, I just want to put you in, as well. Like that's really good, but let's just hit the AP3s too. And I'm like, all right, I'm like, okay,
Sure.
I'll do it. I'll humor you. And then all of a sudden I was like a convert in 2 swings. I'm like, what?
Yes. What?
It was like, I am not often lost for words. And even on the video, I was like, I am lost for words because I hit it. It just felt, for me, for my game, it was so much easier, like to get the ball in the air, and the dispersion was tighter, and I was getting more yardage than I was with the AP2s. So I'm like, all right, that's where you have to throw it out the window of what like with the preconception you came in with, like, I want this club, so I'm going to like do whatever to walk out of that. It's like, just let it flow, just go with what it is. And the confidence level soared with those AP3s. I felt so good about it, but there's a lot of different factors that go into it. A lot of people I know will mix their bag. And this is something you wouldn't necessarily get if you bought just something off the shelf. And that's where you see some guys, like, if they want a little bit more shot shaping control, if they're able to get it with that, I'll go 7-iron down in AP2s, and then I'll go, 6-iron and up in AP3s for a little bit more forgiveness and a little bit more distance. There's just so many different ways you can attack this. But that to me really was a game changer. And it reminded me of something that Kevin said. He's like, listen, these clubs, they're great clubs. They're expensive clubs. You guys would never go in and buy an expensive suit off the rack. So why would you just buy some clubs off the rack? And Kevin's significantly taller than us, right? And he's like, if you and I bought a suit off the rack, it was this, a similar suit. It might be that the sleeves are way too short for me, but they're way too long for you, or whatever. He's like, you're investing the money, get it fitted. You'll feel that much better. Same thing with the club. So I think that was a huge takeaway for me, and one of my favorite parts of the experience. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, I loved, seeing your performance, especially you switching over to hybrid, seeing you hit that. I was excited to see you hit hybrids. That was great. For me, though, Frank, I think the big thing for me was driver. Getting up there, I noticed that I needed a heavier piece of equipment in my hand, basically. I mean, that's what he was trying to build. He was trying to take the driver head, change out the weights, change out the shafts. He gave me heavier shafts. We went from 60 to 70 to 80. We determined that 80 was too heavy. We went back down to 70. I think we ended up with 75 with the Project X hazardous yellow 75. That's the one that I'm going with. It's bright yellow. I got this bumblebee effect. You'll see it in the vlog. But let me tell you something. There was a couple of 300-yard drives, 287, 292 carry. One was 310. You'll see that one in the video too. I haven't seen 300s. I think maybe 7 years ago. I mean, I've been consistently like 267, 270 lately because of my swing. But this corrected my slice. This helped me because the shaft was heavier, because everyone keeps overlooking the shaft. Like you said it before. Yeah. It's the engine, right, of the club. That was your line, and you're absolutely right. Just changing that one little tweak, Frank, and my speed, because he kept talking about spin rate. Mike, your spin rate's too high. When I slice, it's far slice. Right. So when I miss it here, the spin rate's lower because the heavier shaft. So here's where we're getting nerdy, but the science behind it just made sense. When I was missing it, it wasn't really that dramatic. It was probably right cut of the fairway instead of the woods. So I'll take that all day. I'm excited for this. I was crushing it, and
and I've heard now multiple fitters tell me that the shaft is the engine, and if we are used to buying off the rack, it's almost like the last thing we think about, like the shaft, and we there's so much focus that goes into the head.
Because why would you pay more for
driver,
that?
Right? And you're like, oh yeah, whatever. You grab it off the rack in the stock shaft, but that's where the biggest change is made. That's where we spent the most time on every club. It was switching the shafts out. And that's where we were able to really identify stuff. But there was so much other stuff that I learned. One big thing was club weight. Like you talk about, you went up in weight, and some of this stuff, it almost seems like it doesn't make sense, but then when you think about it, it does. So for instance, we were going with some of the shorter shafts for a little bit more control, but then with a shorter shaft, not losing any swing speed. And this is where the TrackMan came in, which was so great because you have measured swing speed. Everything there is measured. And you're like, okay, shorter shaft, physics says it should be slower swing speed. But he's like, no, it's actually, you're able to keep your same swing speed in my case, because I'm able to be a little bit more efficient. I could swing it a little bit freer or whatever it may be. And then the weight was such a big thing. So for instance, he puts me in this one shaft, and it's like it's like a comedy club, you know. I couldn't hit it. I'm like, is this a joke club? Like, what's going on?
Right.
And I'm like embarrassed because here I am with this guy, like Kevin, he's like a top fitter in the country. And I'm like, boom, top of ball. I top 5 in a row. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. Right. And he's like, hang on, switched out the shaft and then boom, back to my ball flight. And he goes, here's the deal. We went too light. And he's like, I want to sometimes prove that by going to the end of the spectrum. He goes, when I went so light, you couldn't feel the club head. And when you can't feel the club head, you can't feel where it is in positionally in your swing in relation to the ball. So you weren't making contact. You're topping it. But that to me was such evidence of something like a shaft weight making that dramatic of a change to being able to not being able to hit the ball to being able to hit it. I mean, we're not talking about subtle change like, oh, it's 1 more yard here or there. It was like I couldn't hit it versus being able to hit it. And it was all because I couldn't feel the club head. So by adding that weight, he was able to, and that's where we were learning as we were going too. It's like a little bit of like instruction and learning about equipment, but learning about the swing and learning about that whole idea of being able to feel the club head. But another thing that I like too, and I want to just make sure I get into this. I made a bunch of notes so I wouldn't miss anything. One question we had for Kevin was the idea, and a lot of people ask this of us, message us or through the Facebook group or whatever, and they say like, well, or I even just hear this just talking with other golfers where they'll say, I'm not quite ready for a fitting. My game is not there yet. I'm not that good where I'd go for a fitting. And what he said was interesting. He said, fittings are actually far more effective for golfers who aren't as good. And the reason being is that really good golfers, like scratch and tour level golfers, they are so good that they can adapt their swing to almost any club. You know, they will, it may take them a swing or two, but they could take any club and adapt it. What they're looking to do when they get a fitting is just squeeze out those little bit better, just a little bit, like very small, minute things that they're just tweaking. Whereas on the other side, when you have golfers like us, mid-level handicap guys, stuff like that, there is so much more room and margin to improve. And that's where a fitting is going to really adapt that club to the golfer rather than requiring that the golfer adapt to the club. So like, for instance, let's say you were to buy something off a rack and it's not fitted to you. There, you may not have the skill set to adapt that club. So let's say you're pushing it right constantly and you're not realizing is that the shaft, the flex or the weight is just not quite the right fit for you. And you just physically can't adapt your club head to correct for that. Whereas maybe a professional golfer could do that. They'd realize, well, this shaft is a little bit too light for me, but I can adapt. We don't realize, and we're just swimming against the current all day, trying to do this thing. Whereas when you go for a fitting, they can fit that to you and you feel like now you're just kind of cruising versus swimming against the current, if that makes sense.
Right.
So that was a really important takeaway for me. And that's something that I wanted to make sure that we dispel. So if you want, Mike, in a second, what we're going to do is we're going to cut to the interview that we did with Kevin, where he breaks it down. And I want to just kind of put that at the end of the episode this week, because that's where we kind of decompress afterwards why he did what he did. And he can explain it so much better than we can. But let's just kind of run through a little bit here of what we ended up with. I'm not going to go through every single club because we do want to do a what's in the bag. And let's just talk about some of the highlights that we liked. I thought one thing that was very interesting, we both ended up, and this is so funny, and everybody loves this, like when we work with fitters or whatever, the fact that you and I are polar opposites is always great.
Completely.
Our swings are so different. Our misses are so different. So that I always find interesting. And I like it because we end up learning so much because we learn both sides of it rather than just learning what works for us. We're watching each other. But one common thing, well, actually there's two common things. We both ended up with the AP3s. Those worked best for both of us. And the other thing that worked best for both of us was the driver, the 917 D2. We both ended up in the same driver head, but the
shafts are the big difference.
The shaft were huge difference. So you ended up with
even for our irons too.
Yes. The Project X Hazardous, the yellow. We are taking submissions for Mike's new nickname with this yellow club.
Yeah, throw them out now. Big Bird, Bumblebee.
And that's the 75 gram. And then I ended up with the Adila Rogue Black 70 in a stiff. And then we had theirs where we just got like some difference in like things like the weighting, like we talked about with you adding a little bit more weight for you. And then the center of gravity settings, those were both neutral for both of us, the hosel settings. And we both end up with a 9.5 degree too. So that was interesting. But there was other different things. And I think where the biggest difference came in was with our fairways, our Fairway Woods. I went in and I told them, I'm like, listen, the 3 wood and the 5 wood are wasted space in my bag. I love my 3-iron. You can pry that from my cold, dead hands. There's no way you're taking that away from me. I didn't even want to hit hybrids. And this is where I appreciate the thoroughness too. I'm like, I don't want to hit them. I don't even want to bother. I can't hit a hybrid. I can't hit a wood. I can't hit a hybrid. But then that's where Kevin, like being also an instructor, he's like, Frank, I think the problem is you're for some reason you are afraid to hit down with this club. And I was. And I'm so used to seeing a wood and trying to hit up with it, like with my driver. And that's why I hit up nicely on the ball, but I can't do it. And I'm like, my miss with these is a top and I can't do it. He's like, I am giving you permission to hit down on the ball. For some reason, my brain needed to hear that. Yeah. And then he's like, swing it like a 5-iron, not like a 5 wood. And he also put me in a shorter shaft because I've been playing a 3 wood that was off the rack. It was way too long for me, so the control wasn't there. He did the shorter shaft, and all of a sudden, I'm just smoking this hybrid. And I'm like, whoop, got to rethink everything now. Yes. But the smart play we ended up doing is we put a 3 wood in my bag, and then we put a low lofted hybrid in to replace the 5 wood. And I think that's going to be a really, really great transition for me.
So you went hybrid 3 wood driver. That's what you're running with?
Yes.
I think I'm doing the same. Okay.
And then going from there to the 3-iron down to the pitching wedge, and then filling it in with 3 other wedges. Or 2, well, it depends. Another interesting thing that he had said was sometimes a smart play is to actually get fitted for like 16, 17 clubs and just take a couple out of your bag to stay within the 14 limit. And he said, and the reason being is, as golfers, sometimes we travel, we play different courses. Sometimes we play a really long course, sometimes a short, and it's smart to just be able to just take something out and replace it with something before you head out. I thought that was another smart takeaway, so I want to make sure I mentioned that.
Yeah, I mean, and even the wedges. I mean, we transitioned over to the short game area at the very end, and we went through that whole Vokey fitting, and just for him to take a look at our swings and determine, okay, you need this grind over that grind, and your swings is too steep, and Frank, yours is too this, and Mike, yours is too that. And like you said before, with Kevin being a coach, he was helping me with my game. He was telling me I wasn't rotating to the ball on my wedge game, and he was trying to help me with my wedge shots because I wasn't doing them that well. But for the ones that I was doing well, he was able to determine what grinds to go with. I think there I ended up with a 48, a 54 now, and a 60. So even my wedge numbers are completely different. So it's back to the drawing board.
In the F grind, and man, those SM7s are gorgeous.
They're gorgeous.
Then, like by then we're like, we have so many decisions, and we're so happy with just anything we're getting that like when we get down, it's like, okay, what finish do you want? The blacked out, the chrome and stuff like that. I'm like, they're so awesome. I have such decision fatigue. I can't tell, but I had to go with the chrome. I just like the look. It gave me a lot more confidence over the ball. I like that nice bright look when I'm looking down, that contrast to the grass. So that was the way to go for that. But this was a really cool takeaway that I learned out there. And again, not just walking out with the equipment, but learning as you go. I noticed that Kevin was like very meticulous with the towel about cleaning the club after each shot, especially the wedges, right? And he's like polishing these clubs up. And you notice the guys on tour will do that, like their caddies are always cleaning the clubs up. And he said something that I couldn't believe. And because we were doing everything on the TrackMan and we were measuring things like spin to such high tolerances, he goes, here's the deal. And after just one shot, there was just a little bit of turf caked into the grooves of the wedge. And he goes, you see that right there? He goes, just that much turf being on there. And if you were not clean that off, he goes, it can mean the difference in 1,000 to 3,000 RPMs.
Crazy.
1,000.
And it's very important for a fitting.
And you're just like, wow, that's a difference in possibly holding a green versus not. So he's like, clean that up. It's going to be a lot better. But he said sometimes strategically, if you don't want a lot of spin, he goes, sometimes just leave a little bit of that turf on there, leave a little bit of that dirt off and clean it after the next shot. I'm like, wow. I mean, this is playing a different mental game that I haven't even had access to until this. And it's like, wow, you just learned so much. So that was really cool too. And I could go on, I could talk about this all day, but I want to it's very brief. I want to just run through and just kind of clip in here and cut to the interview we did with Kevin, this is something we recorded this just immediately after, wrapping the fitting up, and he can explain it even better of what we did and why we did it. So let's just run to that right now. All right, so today, huge day. We're down here at Sleepy Hollow Country Club with Kevin Sprecher. We just went through a full bag Titleist fitting. Mike didn't sleep last night because he's so excited about this. Mm-hmm. About 5 hours out there. We hit about 100 balls. I feel like it's probably the most thorough fitting I've ever been through. But let's quickly introduce Kevin. Kevin, thank you for taking the time to work with us today. It was such an enlightening day.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm glad you guys came up, and hopefully we exceeded some expectations that you guys had when you came here.
Yeah, no doubt. Sure did.
And expectations and preconceptions were thrown out the window. You learned so much. There's so much we did. So if you wouldn't mind, if you could just kind of quickly run through some of the lessons learned, maybe working with me. And we know we joke always time. Mike and I were so different, opposite ends of the spectrum. So you had some opposite ends of the spectrum to work with there. But tell us a little bit about what you found with me and what you found with Mike.
So, Frank, with you, we figured, with the back injury and everything, you didn't like to go full speed. So we had to go a little softer in the flex, stiff flex, but you needed some weight to your shaft. When we tried a shaft that was too light for you, you lost control. Right. So we went from a 90-gram shaft to a 115-gram shaft, and your reaction was immediate. The shots got better, the consistency got better. Yeah. With Mike, we went right away to stiff. He's a high-speed guy, swings at it hard. So we went right away stiff, stayed in the heavier side, which helped his dispersion. Both of you guys both said you wanted a tighter dispersion. A little bit distance wasn't a big deal. Mm-hmm. So that's what helped you with yours. We ended up in the same head, the AP3 head, but we got there differently. You actually, Frank, you actually liked the AP2 head, and you would have said you would have walked right off. Mm-hmm. But after trying the AP3, a little more forgiveness, we actually got some more yardage out of it, and we didn't lose dispersion, and maybe even gained a little bit. It was an instant hit. Yeah. Right away with Frank, with Mike, the AP3 was a hit right away. The AP2 was good, but we knew right away the AP3, the way the balance was, and obviously I think distance is intoxicating. Yeah. He was like, this is for me. He's hitting 7 irons, 185 yards in the air. It's let's do that.
Sold.
One of the things we did with Mike was we went a little bit shorter with his shaft because of his height and his arm length and his wingspan measurements. He didn't need a standard length club, and he's high speed, so he can afford to go a little shorter.
And he didn't even really lose much speed.
Yeah, he didn't lose any speed, but he gained control. Yeah. Like we talked about there, I'd rather hit an 8-iron length club than a 7-iron length club. Mm-hmm. And he was able to, we could probably even gone a little shorter if we really wanted to, but I didn't think we had to. For you, we stayed standard length because keeping the speed was there. The weight balance was good. Mm-hmm. When you go a little bit shorter, it changes the weight, but you were still able to hit it in the center of the club more often at the standard length. So we didn't have to go shorter for you.
Right. Makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So although it's a longer day, 5 hours hitting a lot of balls, what's the benefit of going through and just doing the whole bag fitting?
Well, I think for this, I think one of the things you guys really learned was the learning process, the experience of learning the difference about the heads, how they perform, why heavier shafts work, being able to try different weight shafts. Yeah. When we went through the drivers, we tried a 60-gram shaft, a 70-gram shaft, and an 80-gram shaft. Right. With Mike, 60-gram shaft was all over the place. Mm-hmm. 70 was right where we wanted to. At 80, he couldn't hit it. So so you can't do that in a 1-hour fitting. Right. Or just trying it in a shop, because you try the exact same shaft, the exact same head, the exact same length, just a different weight. So that doing that in fittings is important. Being able to try all the different clubs. I've got 1,000 different head shaft combinations here, being a regional center. Yeah. So not that you're going to try them all. Everyone's like, everyone freaks out because, well, there's too much. I'm like, well, it's my job to know what's going to fit you as a player. Mm-hmm. And your feedback is important when doing the fitting. Yeah. So, but having the option to change the head weight, we found out that a little heavier weight in the 3-wood and the hybrid for you, Frank, was helpful.
Yeah, let me feel the club.
You can feel right. So, and where Mike didn't need that, he didn't need the extra weight. So, those are all things that you can't do in a short fitting or whatever. However we do it.
Yeah, and you all will see this in the vlog when it comes out, that I am now fitted into these bright yellow shaft on this driver, and hey, I'll take it with some of the bombs I was hitting out there for sure.
Yeah, you were that shaft was impressive with you.
It's amazing what goes into a shaft, not many people think about that. So, that was
and for
cool.
you, that shaft was important because you hit down on it a little bit. So this was a counterbalance shaft, which got your launch angle up. You were hitting around 8 or 9 degrees of launch. With the same head, I put this shaft in, your launch was 12 degrees. And your spin came down for the shaft. So you started gaining some yardage and consistency with it.
Right.
See, that's the problem. When you buy a club off the rack, you're not even thinking shaft, And to me, this fitting and other things that we've done before, I've realized that how much it really is the shaft. It seems like that's the bulk of it, right?
Yeah, the shaft's the engine of the club.
Yeah.
If the shaft's not right.
And yet it's widely overlooked.
Completely overlooked. Yeah. Obviously the golfer's important, but the golfer reacts to the shaft and how it flexes and how it feels, not the head. Yeah. Obviously the performance of the head's important, but as you guys felt, shaft performance is 80 to 90% of it.
Yeah. So great stuff. I'm feeling real confident. I can't wait to get on the course with these things. But in the interim, I know people we'll talk about for the Northeast here. I know people have traveled as far as Ohio to work with you. But Kevin, if someone is in the Northeast, how can they work with you if they want to come in and get a fitting?
The best way would be to go to my website, which is kevinsprecher.com, and it's spelled CHER. Or you can go to the Titleist website and look up regional fitting centers. You can find us on there. If you can't get to me up here, go to the Titleist website, titleist.com, and research any of the local professional fitters that are in your area. Everyone's certified by Titleist. You get a good fitting. They may not have what I have here, but they'll have at least 100 options. To come in, and then like I said, you can come. I'm not that far from Delaware, or people come down from Boston from here, so we can always fit you in here. Yeah,
and I like what you said. You don't buy an expensive suit off the rack, right?
Yeah, you don't.
That's
right.
Absolutely.
So, Kevin, we appreciate your time. Thanks a lot for working with us today. I'm really excited to hit the course with these clubs.
Can't wait.
Thanks again.
You're welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Make sure you report back when you get them. We will. I want to hear about it.
No doubt about
don't worry,
that.
We will.
All right. Thanks again.
Great. Thank you.
All right. So again, wrapping that all up, I could talk about this. I could go through every single club and talk about them one by one. And because it was so enlightening, it was so much fun. We had such a blast. But I think we'll kind of work it in as we go, because as you said, Mike, we've got so much to learn now. We've got so much to adjust to. We're going to be playing these clubs moving forward. So once we get them in, that is, and once that happens, we can kind of talk about it as we move on and as we go through these different normal instructional pieces that we do on the podcast. We can talk about how some of this stuff works its way in. But before we wrap it up, Mike, any other takeaways, any other TrackMan stuff, anything like that you wanted to share?
No, I just, again, a huge thank you to those guys. And it's funny, real quick, I came home and I was so excited, and my wife asked me, how did it go? Tell me all about it. And she says to me, she goes, so what does this mean? Does this mean that you're actually going to be like really good at golf now? And I look at her, and my answer was, yes, I am. I am that confident that I'm going to start shaving strokes from the minute I pull the cellophane off the heads of those when they come in. So Can't wait.
Right. And at least you can say, at least I don't have any excuse to play poorly.
Yeah, and I already have it all set up in the back that if I don't play well, I'm just going to say, well, it takes a little time to get used to them. And, so I got excuses lined up all over the place.
There you go.
Yeah.
But anyway, as you said, big thank you to Kevin. Big thank you to Titleist. Yep. Without those guys, it's just like, it's something that would be very difficult to be able to do, especially in one day. So their dedication of being able to work with us on such a tight schedule is just something that I very much appreciate. If you guys are anywhere in the Northeast and you want to work with Kevin, the best way to do that, go to kevinsprecher.com. That's KevinSprecher.com. Kevin does fittings as well as instruction, right in Terrytown, Sleepy Hollow, Country Club, Sleepy Hollow area. And Kevin was telling me that he's had people come as far from as Boston, Ohio, driving to work with him. But if you're somewhere else in the country, you can go to Titleist.com, find a local Titleist Regional Fitting Center, work with them. And as we talked about before, there's just a lot of different opportunities, a lot of different ways that you can do that. So great stuff. If anybody does end up going through those fittings, as much as, we like to talk about ours, I want to hear about yours too. Post them in the Facebook group. Just go to Facebook, just search the Golf Podcast under groups. You'll find us, and I want to hear it. So definitely jump in and check that out. And as soon as the clubs come in, you will see those on social and on the videos. And I think one thing we want to set up as we were going through the fitting, it was kind of funny. And Kevin was joking too. He's like, who am I going to fit better here? You know what I mean? It was like this competition started brewing, right? And then as we started gaining confidence and like surprising ourselves with how good we were hitting certain clubs, we're like, woo, you better look out, Mike. You better look out, Frank, right? Yeah. So we know what's going to happen. We're going to get these clubs out there. We're going to do a video of a Frank versus Mike and have
I love
with it.
Yeah, so, let's do that.
Really great stuff. So you can get to everything, and I'll link to Kevin's website as well as Sleepy Hollow Country Club, for playing host and doing all that stuff. We'll link to all that in the show notes, which you can get to by going to golficity.com/episode 219. And then we've got some more big experiences coming up. So make sure you're following us on social where you can check that out. And we'll see everybody again next week.